What is up, everybody, and welcome to our AMD build series. We are doing one PC in every single form factor. We did mini ITX, micro ATX, ATX, and now we are doing EATX. And EATX is the biggest form factor. When we talk about EATX, we're talking about just big machines, so to speak, the Tonka of PC builds. This is a pretty long video, so remember, you can jump along, jump back and forth. That's the way these are supposed to work. Also try to make these as universal as we possibly can, with the caveat that things like AIO and of course using an AMD install is going to be things that we obviously can't be universal about. Anyway, guys, let's go ahead and start jumping into the parts and start talking about what we're putting inside this case. Okay, so let's talk about the parts that are going into this monstrous build, because as you can see, the parts have grown exponentially since when we started with mini ITX. Starting with the key to this whole thing, we're using a Threadripper. This is a Threadripper 3970X. For our E-ATX motherboard, we're using the TRX40 Aorus Master. This is an E-ATX, obviously for a very big case. We are using, for our GPU, we're using the Founders Edition AMD Radeon 6900 XT. To cool that incredible Ryzen CPU, we're going to be using the Kraken Z73 AIO. We're putting in 3 terabytes of storage total, both SN850s, so these are PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSDs. If you wanted to add a third one, you do have that option. The motherboard does support 3. We are also going to have 128 gigs of G.Skill RAM. That's a total of 8 DIMMs because we're going to fill it all, but we'll show you how to do it with the other ones with just 4 as well. We also have, for our cable extensions, we're going to be using Asia Horse cable extensions just to make sure that the build has an extra sweet level of polish. For the rest of the cooling, we're using those very nice Lee & Lee SL120 fans. We've got the Big Papa, the Silverstone 1100 watt SL1100-TI. It's a platinum level power supply. These are the parts for what is essentially a workstation level build in our absolutely huge 0-in-1 dynamic, probably the one that you've seen all over the internet, but this one's a little bit different because it's the XL version. Let's talk about the tools that we need to build a PC. First and foremost, you need something like a nice big clean area like what I have here. You can use a mod mat like these, which you can pick up on Newegg. If you do it on a kitchen table or just a nice big open area, that's okay. You try and do it not on carpet. Again, it's just to protect from static, ideally like a nice hardwood floor, kitchen floor. If you are gonna do it on carpet, just be extra safe about static discharge. We talk about the tools that you need. There's a couple things. Down here on the left-hand side, we have some screwdriver options. I will tell you, just having a standard screwdriver on hand, some cases require or have like small areas that only a standard screwdriver would fit in, so it's always good to have one of these on hand. We also have options like, for instance, things like WOW sticks, or in this case, iFixit kits that make things a little easier for some of the smaller components. And so depending on how serious you are about building, these are always good options. These right here are zip ties, which I always like to use, and these are really for cable management. You also have the option of what are called Velcro ties, which you have right here. I always have a knife on hand. You don't always have a branded knife like I do, but you know, branded knives are always a good thing. This right here is thermal paste and a thermal paste spreader. The AIO we're going to use comes with thermal paste pre-applied, but should you need to remove it or make a mistake, having some of this on hand is nice. The cool thing about a thermal paste spreader is you get a nice even spread over the entire IHS, which is just better for heat dissipation if you want to do that. This right here is for cutting our zip ties, so having something like this to be able to cut the extra off. You can also use scissors, but a little tool like this, which you can get at like Home Depot or any hardware store, is really good. Finally, we have our isopropyl alcohol and our paper towels. Like I said, if you should make a mistake and you need to reapply thermal paste, you need to remove that thermal paste using your paper towels or your alcohol in order to make that better. So this should be everything you should need if you want to do an ideal kind of build. Again, you really can just get by with a screwdriver and a pair of scissors if you really wanted to. So those are all the tools that you need. Now, guess what? We can get started building the PC. So here's what you're going to need out of your motherboard box. So we have the motherboard out. Obviously, like I said, this is an E-ATX board, so much bigger than the micro ATX, ATX, or even the mini ITX by like quite a degree. You're gonna need your M.2 standoffs. I've taken all of them out in this case, and that's like your little small standoff and your little small screw. You also are gonna need your manual. And again, if you're using, say for instance, an Asus one or whatever it was, where things are gonna be placed specifically on E-ATX boards can be very different. Let's go ahead and set this aside though, and let's walk you through quickly all of the parts that are here, because this is a Threadripper, so this looks very different than the ones that we've done on the other builds. This is normally where you'd have your EPS CPU, but actually the only thing we have over here is a system fan header. Our EPS or CPU power connectors are actually over here now, and there are two. Down here below, this little digital component right here, it shows things like temperature, but it can also do things like show error codes and issues. The two most important connections on the planet, always adding here, are RGB. We've got our 3-pin 5-volt addressable, and then our 4-pin 12-volt RGB header. This is where you're going to plug in if you have RGB. Over here on the left, we've got our CPU, which is the lighter gray. This is the one fan header we have to plug in. This is for our CPU fan. And then again, we have some additional fan headers for additional fans. The 24-pin ATX power is actually sideways in this case, so we'll basically have this a little bit different. Over here, this is actually your front panel connections. That's right, they're not in the same place either. And this is where things like manuals come in, but this is where we're hooking up front panels. We've got our USB-C or USB 3.2 Gen 2 connection here, so this is USB-C. One thing you'll notice specifically with these ones is you'll notice these have a ton of SATA. Down here we have some additional fans. We've got two USB 3.2 connectors here, which is awesome. Just USB 2.0. This is what I was talking about. Again, more fan headers, more RGB. Yes, whoa, we need more of that. And then finally, we've got our front panel audio connection over here on the left. We have our PCIe lanes. We have 4 of them available for us. And again, for Threadripper, that's what these ones are for. You see, we've actually got multiple M.2, which we'll show you guys a little bit later on. And then this giant thing in the center, that is your CPU. And it works a whole lot differently than what you're typically used to. We'll show you a little bit more about that when we get to that installation. You can see all of the RAM slots. That's lots of clicks right here. We got uber clicking when we install all of the different DIMMs. And then finally, we've got a ton of I/O, just given this is a much more robust motherboard. That is the motherboard. That's everything that's on here. Let's go ahead and get started putting all of the components in, starting with the CPU. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna walk you through opening the box, because there's some components inside of a CPU like this that you're not used to needing in this case. So we're gonna open this up. There we go. And you're gonna take this out, so it's like double packaged. But in the bottom, if you pop this out, are 2 things that we are going to need specifically for this build. The first one is a special bracket. This allows us to attach our AIO to this socket specifically, so we'll need that. And then you'll need this right here. This is called a torque wrench, and this torque wrench is what's gonna allow us to install our CPU in the socket as well. So you'll need to remove both of those things, and then you can put the instructions back in, and you're good to go there. On this part, you need to then cut, again, lots of cutting, right along the little bits, and then it's okay, it just pops right out. On the side, there's a little unlock. You just unlock it, and then, there it goes, unlock it like that. Then this little plastic part pops out, and then this just slides out just like this. And there's a little bit on the back that is protecting all of the connections. This doesn't have pins, so to speak, but you can see this is a very, very big CPU. So we're gonna put that out and set that aside, and then we'll go ahead and get it installed. You're gonna see on the top, actually on this is written close 1, 2, 3, and then open 3, 2, 1. So, and down here in these different spots, 3, 2, and 1, that's actually labeled 3, 2, and 1. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go and start over here with 3, because we're gonna follow the instructions, and unscrew 3, like so. You're gonna hear like a little click, same thing, starting with 2. Spin until you kind of hear like a little click, or it'll feel like it's loose. And then same thing with 1. And once you've kind of got it, this part will just pop open like this. And then there's 2 little blue latches. You're gonna grab those and pull those up. That's gonna basically reveal everything. And then over here, there's a little sled. And you're gonna basically pull this little sled out and then remove that. You're going to slide that where that little sled was. And there are little edges that your CPU needs to go in. There's a little line here, the edge, that you're gonna slide it right in, and it's gonna click. Then what you're gonna do is you're just gonna push this back down and it'll click. Then you're going to push this down, and then it says close 1, 2, 3. Now, my thing is just get 1 started. Don't put it all the way. So just get 1 started. Don't put it all the way, then go to 2, giving it a little bit of turns, making sure it catches. You'll kind of feel it in the wrench. Same thing with 3. And then once they're all caught, then go back to 1 and tighten it. Now what'll happen is when you tighten it, eventually it'll stop. You'll see it here in a minute. And then you're just gonna twist it. See how it clicks? That's how you know it's done. Same thing, you're gonna rinse and repeat with 2. There you go. And then finally 3. And boom, our AMD Threadripper, Ryzen Threadripper CPU is installed! Huzzah! I love these little cartridges, they're a lot of fun. By far one of the most fun CPUs to install, for sure. Okay, next up, we're going to install our RAM. Now I'm gonna show you a couple things here because most people aren't gonna stick 128 gigs across 8 DIMMs. So I'm gonna show you what it looks like for most people who buy 4 DIMMs, and then we're gonna go ahead and install 8. Now inside of your manual, we're showing you right here, it shows you on this page where each one of these are. There's a little chart that shows you where to install them depending on the number of DIMMs. You could have as many as just 2 if you really cared about it. But in this case, we're gonna install 4 and then we'll go ahead and install the other ones. So for 4 DIMMs, to activate the dual channel, there's a little slot in the PCB. You're just gonna slide that in just like this. There you go. There's a nice solid click on both sides. You're gonna do the same thing for the other 2 DIMMs. Once you're done, you got all 4. So this is what it would look like if you were just gonna install 4 DIMMs. We're gonna go ahead and finish our other RAM installation. And there you go. All seated and completely filled. So much RAM! Okay, next up, let's go ahead and install our M.2s. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start over here in the bottom. Just gonna remove our screws, like so. Where a magnetic can help. Pop that off, like that. So there's one open, and then we're gonna move this other one right here. Down here. There we go. Now both are open. And you can see this one actually opens up 2 slots, which is great. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go ahead and grab one of our standoffs. We're gonna install one of our standoffs right here at the 80. So we're gonna screw that in. We're gonna take our 1 terabyte and install this at the top. Okay, so next one we've got our top one, and now for these bottom ones, it's a little bit interesting, not what you're used to, but there's a little cap on the top, on the bottom of both of these that you can just basically loosen up. Now, if you are having an issue and these are not something you can do with your fingers, you can grab a little bit of needle nose pliers. Hopefully yours just work, but if you do, grab some needle nose pliers and you're just gonna basically loosen this top little bolt part until it comes off. You're gonna see a little slot in the PCB, same thing. Pop it in, then you're gonna push this down. Then you're gonna take that little top that you unscrewed and screw that down. Take your small tiny screw that you took out as part of your hardware, put that in here. Peel your bit like this. And again, it only goes one way. So the M.2 goes up and then over, and this will kind of lock in at one end like this. Screw that in. And taking your longer screw, which is the only long screw you got, I'm gonna screw that in right here. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna peel just the one side that we're using in this case. Peel that off, line this up just like this. So now both of the tops line up. You're gonna take your extra 2 screws and screw those down. Just like that. Now that we have this, next up, we're gonna go ahead and do case prep. Massive case. Time to get this stripped down, because it weighs a ton if you did it any other ways. In the back, we have these thumb screws. They're captive, so you don't have to take them all the way out. So you're gonna do that, and then there's a little button here you're gonna push, and then that just slides off like so. We're gonna go ahead and take off our first dust filter. To remove the panels, all you gotta do is lift up. That's all there is to it. So that one lifts up, just like that. Just lift up, comes out just like that, and then remove it. There's 2 more dust filters in here, just so, as an FYI. This one will go over here later on, but you can go and slide it over there if you want. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it on its back, like so. We're gonna remove 4 screws. The first ones we're gonna remove are these 2 at the top, right here, and this one. And then you're gonna remove these bottom 2 right here. You do not want to lose these screws because you'll need them later on. There you go. And you're just going to lift up and then move this out. So there's little clips, and on the side you're just going to push in and pull up. We're going to remove all of these because we're going to be installing fans here on the side. Okay, and with that, our case is now empty, much, much lighter, and ready to start our installations. So let's go ahead and install our motherboard. So inside of this white box that comes with and the top of your case, it has all of the extra parts that come, like all your screws for your 011 dynamic. So make sure you take this out because we're getting ready to place the motherboard and we're gonna be using the screws specifically. Just gonna lightly place this right in the center. The good thing is you're gonna have a ton of room. This is why you have an EATX case, is now we have a ton of room around it to basically do all our work. It's funny because if you were to put this in like an ATX case, this thing would be absolutely like swallowing the whole thing. But when you put it in like a big case like an XL, you end up having a ton of room to basically work around, which is another reason why we choose cases like this, because it's just a lot easier to work in. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna use those little screws, and there's gonna be 8 places on the board to put them. Okay, so now our motherboard's installed. Next step, what we're gonna do is we're actually going to do fan prep and build all 9 of our fans and get those all squared away. So that way when we do the rest of it, they're just easy to install and use right away. Okay, so what are you gonna need to hook up all of your fans? Well, obviously you'll need 9 SL120s. I'm not gonna put them all here on the bench, but we're gonna be hooking up 9 of these total. You'll need 3 of these connectors. We only need 1 controller and both the SATA, the RGB, and potentially the splitter as well. You'll need 9 individual packages of the fan screws, and then you'll need 1 of these, and this is just basically, there's an option for a magnet or as just a sticky, so it'll be up to you when you do your cable manage whether you want to use this or not. Now let's show you real quick how to connect a set of 3 of these. So what we're going to do is on here, on each fan, there's a male and a female version of these connectors. And what you're going to do is you're essentially just going to take these and kind of, you'll see there's like a little tooth that these will fit in. It goes underneath like so. And then all you got to do is slide up. And there you go. Just like that, the fans are connected. And then you rinse and repeat again. Rinse and repeat again. Just sliding it in like this. And there you go. There's 3 fans hooked up. One of your tops right here. What you're gonna do is you're gonna stick that in like this, and you just push until that's completely on, just like that. And you wanna make sure these are all nice and secure and tight. And then by the time you're done, you now have 3 sets of fans. You're basically good to go. And this is what you should basically have with all of your fans prepped. So for the first set of fans, what you're gonna do is you're going to go ahead, there's rubber grommets here on the side. You're gonna go and take these 2 cables and just pull these rubber grommets in. And then we're going to basically be putting these right here. I'm going down to the second group of holes here, and I'm gonna line the screw hole for the fan right at the top of it, just like that, and screw the first one in. And these can be kind of tough to screw in. And I'm pulling back as I screw. Because of how these are all connected, I just start in the 4 corners. So we have 1/3 of our fans installed. Go ahead and put this back down like so. Then go ahead and use your little, the one that even though we took these out, now that we have them, the other fans installed, we can just slap this back in. And there you go. Now you've got that top part covered. And now we can go ahead and do our AIO. Here is the stuff you're going to need to set up your AIO. And this is just the stuff that I took out of the box. Now, what is not in the box? Obviously 3 Li and Li fans. I'm not gonna be using the NZXT fans that came with the AIO. This bracket, which we showed you how to take off earlier on with your CPU. So out of the AIO box, all you need is this set of screws. This is the only thing out of there of the screws that you have in the box. And you'll need these cables. And then of course you'll need the pump res combo. We're gonna take 12 of our really long screws and we're gonna screw them in. I'm gonna start in the front corner. You can lift it up, make sure it goes in the hole. These can be, you might have to push a little bit to get it to line up the first time, but it will go in. There it goes. Turn this around and do the same thing in the other corner. And then once you get the corners in, actually should be good. Now the rest of them should just go in easily. So you can put it back where it was and finish the installation. Our AIO is put together. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this installed in the case. One thing I did want to talk about real quick, we're gonna do a little teacher Robey moment. So one of the things you're noticing, I know people are gonna ask, hey Robey, when I'm gonna mount my AIO, I notice you have different options. You have top mounted, you have side mounted, and you have bottom mounted that you could mount your AIO. And you might ask, Robey, why are you mounting it at the top versus mounting it at the side or at the bottom? And I'll tell you really quickly, when you have an AIO, and some of this is dependent, but specifically an NZXT AIO. So when you have a system like this, there is air inside of this system, and some of that air you'll want it to settle at the top. If air gets inside of the pump, it can reduce the amount of time a pump can last. Now, when you have it like this, obviously the air will settle at the top of the radiator, and it'll never get down into the pump. On the side, you actually don't have the same problem. You could do it this way as well. This is an option, and if you really want to do this, you could, because of where the pump is going to sit, it's below, so air is actually going to get trapped up here, and it's not going to travel down to the pump, and so you should be okay if you do it this way. But if you do it this way, which is at the bottom, then air is going to get into the pump for sure, and it's going to reduce the overall lifespan of the pump. So ideally, what you want to do is you want to top mount it, because there's no chance for this. It's okay if you want to side mount it, but that's why I'm top mounting in this case. I know that's a question that's going to come up. I just wanted to walk you through that really quick. So we're going to push this closer like this. And what you're going to do is you're just going to run these cables right here into this top rubber grommet, like so. And as you're pulling it through, you're going to lift this up and then hold this just like this. What you're going to do is you're going to install these. You're going to grab them in your two corners just to get it to hold. Then you don't have to do this anymore. So we're going to grab one right there. And then once you have those two screws in, you can let go, because now it'll hold itself. And then you can finish screwing in the rest of your radiator. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to install our two cables for our AIO. On the side here, you'll see that it has these two little like lips, and those lips line up with the two indentions on the side. And then you're just going to basically do it, doing straight in and then push until it clicks. Just like that. And the same thing with the USB, which, I mean, if you have an iPhone or anything like that, just make sure it's the right direction, pop it in, and then push. There you go, now you have your cables basically installed. Okay, so what you're gonna do once you have your cables installed, you're going to take your bracket and you're going to remove it like so. So all it is just very simply twist and take off. So what you're gonna do is put this down like this and then press kind of hard and then just twist. And again, smaller end goes above the tubes. It's gonna take a little bit of work, but this is the only way you're gonna be able to install this for this particular AIO. And then what you're gonna do is making sure, and you might have to twist, but the best thing to do is pushing like this. So your tubes are gonna kind of be like this S shape almost, and there's some movement here. And then you're gonna do is put it down like so. Each one of these little things is gonna line up with the post. And then taking your screwdriver, slowly start pushing the screw in. And you're gonna want to go in opposite directions, so then we go over. You're gonna take this one cable, which is your CPU, you're gonna run it behind, and you're gonna plug it into this light gray spot right here, like that. That'll hide there. And then you'll take these other cables, and you'll run them. And then for this USB cable, because it's not the longest, what we're gonna do is we're basically gonna run it down, and we'll kind of trap it underneath, but for now, just run it down and leave it near the front, because we're gonna be hooking this on the front and then hiding this cable afterwards. So what we're getting right now is we're just undoing all of our cables, so we have them all, and then we'll undo all of this stuff. we're not installing any SATA drives or anything like that. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna re-put this stuff together. There's 3 SATA and 2 power, and they're all connected to these boxes. We can go ahead and just zip tie them out of the way. This area is all gonna be taken by the PSU. So your cable management area is only right here. So again, even though I use 3 zip ties here, the main reason being is that you just don't have, for as big as this case is, you really don't have a ton of room to cable manage. So you wanna get things as compressed as absolutely possible. And what I'm gonna do is go ahead and unhook my other fans here. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna run our front panels. It's gonna be a little bit different, guys. We're not gonna do a lot of cable management until the end in this case. We're just gonna get everything hooked up because of how much complication, how much we're adding to this build. It's just gonna take us time to basically get them all connected. Then once we have everything connected, we'll work on stacking it here in the back. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go and run all of our front panel cables and get those hooked up and then go from there. So first one we're gonna grab is our HD audio. That's gonna go in the bottom slot down here, like so. We also have 2 of these USB 3 connectors. We're gonna run both of those also down in this slot down here. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our front panel connections, and these are actually gonna go right here on the side in this middle one. And then we're also gonna grab our USB-C as well and also put it into this slot right here. And that'll be all of the connections we're gonna do in this round right now. Okay, so for your USB-C, it only actually goes in one way. So when you push it in, you can actually see there's some teeth on both sides. The longer of the teeth goes towards the RAM, and then you just go in at a 90-degree angle and just push down, and then it'll click in nicely. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do our front panels, which this one has absolutely everything. So we're gonna show you the diagram right here, just so you know. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna push all these the right way and hook those up. So power plus and minus, then power switch, then underneath is reset switch, then hard drive into one big clump, and then starting on the far left, just plug them all in. There you go. And then they all just plug in just like that. It's the easiest way to do it. Okay, now down at the bottom, the 2 worst connections on the planet. We're gonna show you a little picture-in-picture for these, but again, just keeping it that 90-degree angle. Go straight down on both of these, just like that. There we go. Then we're gonna grab our HD audio. This one goes all the way on the far left, like this. It's only keyed one way. So it's gonna plug in just like we're showing you here. Then we're gonna grab this USB 3.2, this USB 2 from the front. We're gonna plug this in right here. And there we go. Now all of our front panels are connected. And we'll deal with cable management here at the end. Last bits that we now have is we're gonna go ahead and install our GPU, then we're gonna get our cable extensions, and then install our last fans, and then cable manage, and then we're good to go. So let's talk about getting your GPU in. What we're gonna do is we're gonna push this cable kind of up against the edge. You can see that these 2 right here are the 2 covers we're gonna remove. So what you're gonna do is just use your screwdriver and pop these 2 off. And be super careful about these. These sometimes will just fly off. So just being careful as you unscrew them to get them out. There we go, right there. Okay, and once those are removed, we're gonna grab our beautiful 6900 Founders Edition. And one of the things you're gonna do is just kind of push the cable up against the edge here and just kind of hide it. Again, you're just trying to keep it trapped down there. You don't want to pinch it, but again, just once you kind of get it in there, now you can see it's locked behind the GPU. Now what we're gonna do is go ahead and lock in our GPU now. Just like that. Next up, we're gonna go and do our cable extension. Now I'm gonna show you about the cable combs, and so we'll show you on this one, and then after that we'll go ahead and hook up our cables. Basically the way this is gonna work is what you wanna do is you wanna just see which direction, for instance, this cable is gonna get plugged in, and then you take your cable combs like this, and then you put those so they top is the completed part is up in the same direction as how you hook up the cables. So I quickly run these like so. You see, just running them in between each one like that. I'm gonna take this last one right here. And then what you do is you just kind of push it down, and then now it's a little easier to get this other one on. Just get it a little bit closer, the cables stay taut, and then they'll pop in just a little bit easier. Just gets it quicker to just kind of pop it in like that. Okay, there we go. And then again, just because of the way the unique nature of this particular connector, we don't need to put more than 2. So you're just going to kind of put that. So there's a little rubber grommet down here. You're going to kind of push this into that little rubber grommet like so, and then you're going to take your cable, push it in, and keep pulling from the other side until it goes all the way in. You can see the way that's going in there. Just like that. See, and then you're going to use that cable comb to kind of push it off of the edge here. And you just make sure that that's nice and even. So there's that one. With the Asia Horse, it comes with both black combs and it also has a clear comb. You see that I've got this clear comb that kind of connects the other two. This is to kind of keep them holding their shape. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and hook this up like this. Plug these in. Like so. Then what you're going to do is kind of push these other cable combs down. And you can use this other one to kind of keep them connected. So even as they rotate and go through, they keep their shape. Okay, now for the last cables, we're going to do, these are going to go up to the top here. So we're going to connect this one. We just have a couple cable combs on this. What we're going to do is actually run these off to the side. In this top one, like so. And again, pulling this through, the side over here. Okay, so all of our cables are run. Everything else is now hooked up. The front's essentially done. We just need to get the last 3 fans in. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna lift this up like so. In the front down here, some small screws. Just gonna wanna unscrew these 2. Go all the way out. Supposed to, there it goes. Then you're going to use these little clips to remove this little tray, just like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab our last set of Lee & Lee fans, connect them like this, so the cable's at the far end, and flip it over, and screw these last fans on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and run these cables down here at the very bottom. You can see there's a little hole. Run these cables down here. And this basically slides into these little holes right here. You're just going to push it down and it'll click in. And then you can screw these back down. Down. There we go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to flip this over and get our cable management done and a couple more connections, and then we'll put in our PSU. We're going to hook up all of our SL120 uni stuff. 6 connections that we'll have to hook up into our box. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna take them in pairs. So we're gonna start with the top left ones, and then they basically, starting with 1, we're gonna plug in the fan first, and then we're gonna plug in the RGB second. And then when you push it, there's a little top. You're gonna make sure that this locks in. So that's how that locks in. And then we're gonna take our next pair, which we'll do from the side ones, and we'll make these 2. So we'll hook the bottom up, like so, and then same thing, hook in the RGB, push it until this comes up, and then it locks in. And then lastly, the ones at the bottom, 3, will go here at the bottom like this, then we'll take the same thing and then push this one in. And there you go, now it's all locked up. And finally, you can untwist this, and then there's our USB. Okay, last couple connections we have here that we have to worry about. The first one is our power for these, and this is the 4-pin one. It goes on the one side. You can see there's 2 teeth at the top. Those 2 teeth go into the top, and you're just gonna push it in just like this, and it'll go all the way in. There you go. It feels like kind of like a little click. Then the last thing you're gonna do is you're gonna grab your RGB and your fan header one. Little teeth go on the top, and then you're gonna push it all the way in, and it'll kind of click in. And there you go, now all of those cables are connected. You're gonna take your RGB splitter. At the very end of this is an RGB cable. Go ahead and remove both of these plastic bits, like so. And I'm gonna take this and plug this in. There's an arrow, and you're gonna line up, you see the arrow? There's an arrow. You're gonna line up those 2 arrows and plug them in just like this. And then down here at the bottom is another RGB. That one actually belongs to the case. You're gonna do the same thing. Take the arrow and plug that in together too. Just like that. There you go. Okay, now that we have that, we're gonna take these cables that we just did, so our fan header, our RGB header, and our USB, and we're gonna run them into this bottom grommet right here. Just gonna push them right through, and then we're gonna hook those up on the other side. First one we have is our USB, and that USB is keyed one way. That's gonna go right here next to the other one. We're showing you how to do that right here in the little picture-in-picture. Next one we have is the fan header. This is a 4-pin, and there's a system fan right next to this. We're gonna plug that in right there. And finally, our last connection is an RGB connection. This is gonna go all the way over to this 5-pin, 5-volt addressable on the far end, and it's gonna plug in right here. And there you go. Now all of our cables are plugged in. And now we get to turn it over and cable manage. Yay! Okay, so for cable management, remember everything here, we want as minimum in this area as absolutely possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and you're gonna watch a time lapse of me kind of cable managing and getting things out of the way. And then from there we'll talk about why I did what I did. Now we have everything cable tied and cable managed. The only thing we have left is our cable extensions, which are sitting out, and we have our 2 power things that we have to plug in to power our Lee and our AIO. Just a couple things here, guys, when you think about how I cable managed. Again, what I'm trying to do is to keep this area clean. So you'll see what I do is like, it's all about kind of stacking and clumping. So I've clumped most of the cables together that are out of the way. So it makes it really easy for me to get in here and basically push things around. We still have a lot of power cables and stuff to come in, so you still need quite a bit of room. But that's the secret of success, so to speak. Now what we're gonna do is let's go ahead and get our PSU put together. Okay, so what do I need for this particular part right here? Well, first thing I need is I have 2 PCIe VGA cables. So we've got 2 of these. These are what you're gonna plug into the GPU. The next thing I've got is I have 2 CPU cables. And so you'll see these are the ones that are actually split at the end that we're gonna plug directly into our CPU. So that's those. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna do our we're gonna need a 1 SATA connection. This is to connect our 2 spare, like our AIO and our Lee SL120s. And then finally, we'll need our motherboard cable. We're gonna grab a couple of these Velcro. These are what we're gonna use for cable managing all of our big cables together. And then we've got our PSU screws. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna prep our motherboard. And the way this one works is you have little protectors for each section. So this is going to go like this. There's a 3-pin. Plugs in just like that. And this is the part that plugs into the motherboard. So there's that. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our SATA. So we're gonna take one more 3-pin out. We're gonna plug this 3-pin right next to it, just like that. So there's our SATA all connected. And then we have 2 CPU. And actually you'll see there are 2 black connections here at the far end. Whoops. So we'll grab those. Now the part that isn't split is what you plug into this. So there's one. We're gonna do the same thing with this one. There is 2 right there. Okay, so now we've got 2 CPUs in. Then finally, we have 2 of the VGA. And you'll know these will plug into the blue because they're marked blue. So you're gonna go ahead and take 2 blue out. Little additions. I'm gonna plug these right here. And there we go. Now, our PSU is ready to hook up. And just to be safe, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our first ones and kind of clump them together and just do our first ones like this. This becomes a whole lot easier if you start with them clumped. Okay, here you go. To install our PSU, which is a little bit different for this case, it's just gonna go right here in this little slot right here. So fan pointing up. I'm gonna slide it in just like this and then push it all the way towards the back. Just like so. Eventually it'll just kind of slip in. There you go, just like that. Look at that, got plenty of room. We're gonna grab our PSU screws from the side, line them up. There is one. There is number 4. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. We now have our PSU in. Time to just hook up the last of our cables and turn this bad boy on. We had 2 SATA cables that need to get plugged in. We have one right here. We have the second one right here. So we're gonna take these, again, they're keyed one way. We're gonna plug this one in right here. And then this one right here, like so. That's everything having to do with SATA. We'll go ahead and cable tie this, zip tie this. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our motherboard, make sure it's all the way tight. Next we have our 2 CPU. They're sitting right here. There's only one way these will go in. So plug that one in. Same thing with this one. Turn it over. There we go. Same thing. This whole section down here is kind of what I saved for the GPU bit. So again, rotating, making sure these are plugged in. Kind of just want to keep these down here. I'm just going to push them down here. Same thing with this one. Get it connected. I don't want to move these too much because they're perfectly placed in the front. Start putting our case back together. Goes underneath here. Push it down. Look, it's like there's no cables now. And now we're gonna do last checks is we're gonna pick this up, just look at the front and make sure everything's adjusted correctly. Okay guys, now it's time to start putting the case back together. Put our dust filter back on the top. There's little tabs on the bottom. Those line up with the top, there's little tabs on the top, which you can see right there from the top down. It's gonna push that in, just pops right down, like that. There we go, just like that. Make sure it gets in both the top and the side. There we go. Just gonna pop this down like this, and then just slides in and screws on. Plug this in, and boom. Look at that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for us. The final one, unless you're watching this in reverse order, then it's the first one, or it's the second one, or the third one, but this is the EATX. I might say this may be the most complicated step-by-step guide that has been done probably in a while, because most of these times we do these step-by-step guides, they are very simple. A couple things about this. Again, we tried to make this as universal as possible. You can always do things like add an additional fan or change out the GPU or whatever it was. We hope that this guide was not only easy to follow, but if you chose your own parts, you were still able to figure out, based on what we showed, on how to do it on your own. Guys, I would love to know down below if that worked. I mean, again, these try to be shorter, we try to make them succinct, so if there's something you felt like we missed, we'd love to know all of that stuff down in the comments below. Now, while you're down there, make sure you slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring that notification bell so you get a notification each and every time we go live right here on the channel. Speaking of live, we have a live show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday starting at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, which you should check out either here on YouTube or also on Twitch. Outside of that, guys, we hope you enjoyed the build. We hope you've learned a lot. We hope that you enjoyed this journey with us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video.